event to celebrate the visionary work of our Minister of Just Transition and all they've been able to accomplish in the past few years. So again, please tell us where you're joining from and what brought you here to this event tonight. Welcome every single one of you. Thanks for coming. What we're also going to ask you to please take a minute to copy the link to the Facebook live stream in the chat and share it with your friends and family on your own Facebook timelines. If you have our Facebook and Facebook social media ready, you can go ahead and share it, but we also have the link shared there in the chat. You don't have to exit the call. You can just minimize your Zoom screen to share. We'll soon hear from our Minister of Just Transition, but before we do that, I want to introduce myself. So I'm really excited to be here. My name is Caitlin, and in the year 2023, I was named the head of the Tax the Rich Commission. On the heels of a multi-year pandemic, the rich were only getting richer, with billionaires like Galen Weston raking in record profits off the pandemic. Once elected, taxing the rich became a top priority for our government, and we quickly initiated a national excess profit tax on emergency profiteering, one of the most popular measures we've been able to achieve. This, paired with the fossil fuel windfall tax, as well as the wealth tax on the accumulated assets over 5 million, allowed us to get to work on many of the projects you're going to hear about shortly. We're the first government to take the polluter pay principle seriously, but that's what we're all about. Redistributing wealth to ensure we're all taken care of, not just the wealthy few. But enough about me and the work of my team. I now want to thank our digital support team, Atia, Chris, and Jen, who are helping to make this whole event possible. So thank you for all the behind the scenes work that you're doing. Our government understands that to tackle the climate emergency, we need to rapidly transition off of fossil fuels. We made this possible with a big, bold Just Transition Act that launched the Ministry of Just Transition, now accelerating the shift to a 100% renewable energy economy while protecting workers and serving our communities. We have made it clear since the get-go that the need for a just transition off of fossil fuels is a matter of climate justice, something that our distinguished guest has been fighting for well over a decade. 14 years ago, Anjali Appadurai was organizing young people from all over the world at the United Nations climate conferences. For years, her and her comrades blasted world leaders for their failure to meet the climate crisis at the scale necessary, leaving behind global South countries bearing the brunt of climate impacts. Today, she is leading up the Federal Ministry of Just Transition, making possible the kind of work necessary to meet the climate crisis at the scale and pace that science and justice demand. I hope you will all join me in welcoming Anjali to the digital stage. Over to you, Anjali.
Thank you, Commissioner Caitlin, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here and to be celebrating all that we've accomplished in the past few years since I was named Minister of Just Transition. When I was elected 3 years ago, our government decided that we had to leave behind an economy that traps most of us in dead-end jobs or in dying industries. Instead of watching the elite rake in cartoonish profits, we made the decision that wealth must be shared and protecting the health of people and planet was paramount. In short, we decided to build a future based on care and repair. There are 5 major program areas that kicked off in the ministry that are now in full swing. First things first, we got started on the fossil fuel phase out that previous governments weren't willing to admit was necessary. We canceled all proposed fossil fuel projects and halted all work on projects under construction. While we were doing that, we ended all direct and indirect fossil fuel subsidies. Then we got to work rolling out the retraining programs for oil and gas workers. These workers already had an immense level of skill that with a bit more training allowed them to shift with ease to other industries. They started work in the geothermal energy sector, built high-speed rail systems long overdue in communities across the country. They worked on retrofitting buildings like schools, hospitals, and long-term care facilities that desperately needed upgrading, and built a booming renewable sector from the ground up. Some workers did the important work of decommissioning pipelines and cleaning up well sites before taking early retirement packages. And young people especially loved our next program, the Good Work Guarantee. We made it the law of the land that anyone who wanted a good, green, unionized job could have one. And over the past 3 years, we were able to create more than 1 million jobs while rapidly decarbonizing and reducing inequality at the fastest rate we've seen in history. As it turns out, putting people's needs and the ecological limits of our planet at the heart of the economy changes everything. And we invested in bold solutions that have never been tried before. We redirected public funding toward real solutions to the crises we face, including water treatment facilities that ensure every single community has access to clean drinking water, affordable zero emissions housing, and free rapid public transit. We started with Indigenous and historically marginalized communities who have been under boil water advisories and living with poor air quality and inadequate housing for far too long. The economic boom from this redirected public funding lifted communities out of poverty, put community members in family-sustaining jobs, and has allowed us to start to address the centuries of deep inequality in access to services and basic necessities of human life. And perhaps more importantly, we embraced the calls for land back and put Indigenous leadership at the heart of this work. We wouldn't have been able to accomplish all of these things if it weren't for the partnership we've worked so hard to nurture with Indigenous communities. Every project we are pursuing is proceeding in partnership with Indigenous communities who are not only fully consulted, but at the table for the planning and implementation of every single Ministry of Just Transition project. We're finally making long overdue investments in Indigenous-led initiatives to build safe housing, ensure clean drinking water for all, and develop community-owned renewable energy sources. We agreed that Indigenous nations must be paid property tax for the use of the lands that we call Canada by all 3 levels of colonial government. Since then, even the most remote Indigenous communities have a solid tax base and other revenues. I'm now going to share with you a video that we've made to share this work with people from coast to coast to coast. I hope you'll share it with your friends and family. Thank you.
Katya, we're just having some sound issues. Might need to start over again. Make sure you're unmuted.
Is the sound not working? Okay, let's try again.
Tech issues persist in the future. We can't get away from them.
Can't get away from them. Okay. Okay, let's try this.
Now we can't see your screen. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Woo. Okay, so as you all probably have already seen this video, but if you haven't, I hope that you are really enraptured by the start and then reality set in at the end. So of course, Anjali is not the Federal Minister of Just Transition. And I am not the Tax the Rich Commissioner. Anjali is an incredible climate justice activist and advocate and communicator, but she is not our Federal Minister of Just Transition. And of course, these programs aren't a reality that are in this video, but they should be. Some of you probably recognize Anjali from her work. You know, she ran for public office. She's been a movement builder and an artist. And just want to really appreciate how much Anjali has put into advocating for all kinds of climate solutions, but in particular, really lending her voice to this campaign. So thank you, Anjali, for helping us kick this really exciting event off. Okay, so I see some people in the chat saying they really enjoyed the video. Yeah, I want to hear your reactions to it, your impressions. Pretty convincing at the start until you get to the end. Did anyone watch it on social media and actually not make it till the end and then share it thinking that it was real? Or or was that just a few people? Yeah, it does make me tear up too, Anna. Wish it were two. Yeah, very well done. I know, I want to watch it again and again. It's pretty great. So we are hoping that you can all take a couple minutes right now and share that video on your social media. I know we've seen that tons of people who are on this call have already done that. So thank you. It's gotten so much traction on social media, and that's really because I think people saw it, saw how compelling it is, and then wanted to share it with their friends. So thank you for sharing it. We're at a point right now where our government is still approving extreme extractive projects like Bay du Nord and investing heavily in things like carbon capture and storage, expensive, unproven technologies that ultimately favor the oil and gas industry. These are false solutions that will only see our emissions continue to go up and inequity continue to rise at a time when we need to be cutting emissions drastically and investing in our communities. Our political leaders aren't moving at the pace and scale that this climate emergency demands, but together we're going to change that. So I want you to share in the chat what things about that video or what Anjali and myself talked about, what things for you are worth fighting for. What about a just transition is worth fighting for to you? So I want you to share that in the chat. And then we're going to move into how we're going to change the game. So I'm going to pass it over to Jen, my colleague, to share how we're going to put pressure on the Trudeau government to make this better future real for all of us. So over to you, Jen.
Yeah, thanks, Katie and Anjali, for showing us what's possible if we win a just transition. So my name is Jen, and I'm a digital organizer with 350 Canada. I'm so thrilled to be here to join all of you and tell you all about the new project we launched, the Ministry of Just Transition, which we launched as a team, but also with creative input from Avi Lewis and Oscar Steiner, and of course, all of you who took part in the March 12th Day of Action for a Just Transition and helped shape and build this big, bold vision we're fighting for. So on the surface, the Ministry of Just Transition website looks like a real Government of Canada website, but when you look a little deeper and you peel back the layers, it's really future fiction at its core. It's the scale of climate action our government needs to be taking but isn't. And since they all lack the imagination and ambition needed, we took inspiration from the visionary actions hundreds of you hosted from coast to coast, and all of you brought to life the vision for a just transition off fossil fuels. And we also wanted to inject some hope and imagination in times like this. And that's why all of us are here tonight, because we want to win that vision that Anjali and Katie walked us through earlier, and a just transition that is bold, big. It holds fossil fuel companies accountable, and it leaves no worker or no community behind. With that, I'll pass it back to Katie.
Awesome, thanks, Jen. Yeah, so we all know that to win a just transition, we're going to need to build the public pressure necessary to force the government into what we call a decision dilemma. Many of you have already been a part of this work, some of you for a few months, others for many years. There's so many familiar faces or names, I guess, in the chat and faces that I can see on the screen. Many of you took part in the Day of Action for a Just Transition on March 12th. Some of you were in Ottawa in November when we had a big press conference and rally. And I see people here who have been part of like the labor and environmental movement and have been talking about just transition for quite some time. So thank you, whether you've been here doing this work for 20 years or you just showed up today. We're all the right people to be here in this room. So thank you. And I don't need to tell you all this, but I think even for myself, I need to remember that we're not going to win a just transition if we only ever talk to the people who already agree with us. We know this in our heart of hearts. That's what this next chapter in our organizing really needs to focus on, recruiting, organizing, and mobilizing enough people to make a just transition a reality. So I'm going to pass it to Jen, who's going to give us an overview of the ways that we can really move that forward and accomplish that.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So as Katie mentioned, we're inviting you to join what we're calling the Just Transition Climate Corps, which we envision to be an army of organizers across the country in all communities who will be up in arms and will work together to build popular support and the vision for a just transition we deserve. And we're going to do that in 5 ways. So number 1, launching the Ministry of Just Transition and getting our big and bold vision for a just transition out in the world. And I guess we can put a big check mark beside that. So that's really exciting. Then we'll do online actions together to continue to build political pressure on our targets. And we're going to be doing online action together today. So please stay tuned till the end of the call. We're really excited to take action with you. Third, we'll also be organizing offline actions across the course of spring and summer that will bring us together in our communities and to grow our movement and build pressure on our government. And we also want to be doing compelling storytelling. So, the video that we showed you earlier is just the start, but we also want to see stories from all of you, from your communities, from the grassroots. So we're really hoping to do storytelling and showcase all the incredible organizing that you'll be joining us for in the summer. And then we also think it's really important to mark the anniversary of the Heat Dome. We absolutely feel a mandate of a Ministry of Just Transition should be to mark anniversaries of climate disasters, including the first climate mass casualty event we all witnessed and experienced in Canada last summer. As someone who lives in the interior, I know a few of you in the chat said that you're also from the interior. I run a small farm, and the heat dome and wildfires that followed were absolutely devastating, and we absolutely need to come together and mark this moment while demanding our politicians are held accountable. And we need them to do better, like simply put, and that includes passing a Just Transition Act that accelerates the transition off fossil fuels and really treats the climate emergency for what it is. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Katie.
Amazing. Thanks, Jen. So we talked about the Climate Corps, and this is really the group of people who are going to make this a reality. So it's all of you in this room and many, many more from coast to coast to coast. We're going to kick off our next phase of organizing with Faxathons, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I also wanted to show you this timeline to give you a sense of the kinds of things we can be doing over the next couple of months to really build that critical mass that we need. So we can do things like postering with wartime style climate propaganda, having house meetings to really build that vision together and that alignment together. We're going to bird dog our MPs and ministers when they're in our communities. We're going to show up and make sure they know that we expect them to deliver on a just transition. And of course, like Jen said, we're going to mark the anniversary of the deadliest climate event in Canadian history, the Heat Dome. All of this together and so much more is really going to set us up to mobilize en masse this fall. So I'm going to get back to the Faxathon. So Ati, if you can go to the next slide. Who here was part of defeating the Energy East pipeline? And if you were a part of that, do you remember the application process we did to apply to be interveners in the National Energy Board's review of the pipeline? Is there anyone here who was involved in that? I would love to hear if you were. And if not, that's totally okay. Let me see here. Anyone? Okay, maybe there hasn't been anyone in this room involved in them. That's totally okay. It means our movement is growing bigger and bigger. But basically what these events were these apply-a-thons where activists across the route of the pipeline. Oh, great, I see. Atia actually joined the NEB Apply-a-thon in Guelph, amazing. And I know there were some in Winnipeg and Halifax and other communities. So what they were, and you can see in this picture on the right, are two activists in Halifax who, I was actually at the event that day. They held an apply-a-thon in a local cafe that was really popular in our neighborhood. And they had a couple of computers out that people could use. And basically they had people there showing folks who RSVP to attend the event, but also passerbys who are patrons of the cafe, inviting them to make an application to intervene in the proceedings around the energy pipeline on the grounds of climate. Because at the time, the National Energy Board did not want to consider climate in the total impacts assessment for the pipeline, which is wild to think. It would have been the biggest pipeline ever in North America. So those people, those organizers were able to actually activate a lot of people who were already in the movement to make submissions to be interveners, but they also got to talk to thousands more people in their communities about the pipeline, about climate change, and ultimately activating those people to take action. So that's really where we're drawing the inspiration for our Facts-a-thon. So if you can go to the next slide, Atia. So during the month of May, we really see the Facts-a-thon actions as a way for us to visibilize the support for a just transition, but also build that support. So, and cafes, malls, and farmers markets, we can actually encourage people to talk about just transition, but also we can invite them to use our computers, our tablets, or even their own smartphone to send a fax to their MP and to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Steven Guilbeault. So the reason we've decided to send faxes for this campaign is because sending a fax to someone is actually much more disruptive and harder to ignore than emails. And we also think it sends a strong message to use technology as outdated as fossil fuels. It's about time our political leaders learned they need to abandon their archaic incrementalists around climate action in the same way that they should probably stop using fax machines. And so we think if thousands of us across the country disrupt our MPs' regular routine with these faxes demanding a just transition, we can actually make our demands more impossible to ignore by them in the crucial weeks before Parliament breaks for the summer. And that's the political goal, the political target goal. But through these actions, we're also going to be able to, again, put our support for a just transition on display and have conversations with thousands of people in our communities all across the country, which is what we really need to do if we're going to build the kind of power that it's going to take to win. So I'm going to pass it back over to Jen, and we're going to talk about how we do this.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So we all know a just transition is worth fighting for, and it's the first critical step towards transitioning off fossil fuels in a good way that leaves no one behind. And we know you think so too. So thank you for taking the first step in joining today's call. So are you ready to take the next step to join the Climate Corps and organize Facts Action in your community? Please raise your hand or type in the chat, and we'll give you a moment to, do that. Awesome. Katie's really excited. Mike's excited. Dawn. That's great. And we've dropped a link in the chat for you to sign up. That's great, Chris. And I want all of you to take a minute now to sign up to be a part of the Climate Corps. Atia has dropped a link in the chat. So please follow that link. You don't need to minimize Zoom, you can just click it or copy and paste it in a browser. And the first thing you'll receive after you sign up is instructions on how to host a Faxathon event. It'll include a how-to guide. It'll walk you through step-by-step directions on hosting this action. So we'll give you a few more moments to fill in the form. So we'll take a pause. Again, it's in the chat, so make sure to click that link and sign up so we can follow up with you right after this call and we can start organizing over the spring and summer together. I see so many hands raised. This is really exciting. So yeah, we'll give folks a moment to go fill out that form, do it now, and we'll follow up with you.
Thanks for coming, Lori. Yeah, and Pat, I think it's an awesome idea to have one with your church group. I think that's such a great idea. Yeah, what we're really thinking for these actions is like go to where people already are congregating. And so obviously a congregation is a great, if that's your community, go to it, right? Yeah, go to where the people are. Yeah, Lori is an inspiration. And yeah, we see you, Jennifer, Sandra, Mark. Mark's been part of our climate core already. Sweet. Awesome. Okay, so I take it people are already jumping over to sign up to be a part of the climate core. You know, some of you may see this tactic and think, I don't really know if that's how I want to contribute. That's totally okay. We encourage you to attend events that are happening in your community. Maybe you want to give it some second thought later. If you're not totally convinced, that's totally okay. We also need people taking actions in all kinds of ways if we're going to win this. We have a digital content team. If you follow 350 Canada on social media, you know that our social media is fire, and that's thanks to Chris, who's on this call, but also to other people who are on this call, because we actually have a team of volunteers that really fuel all of that content. So if you're really interested in digital content creation, for example, join the Climate Core. We're going to actually be launching a TikTok account. So if you like TikTok, we need people to help us with that. We want to be doing more with reels, more memes, all of that. And content creation is just a tip of the iceberg. When you sign up to be part of the Climate Core, you're going to be invited to our new Discord server. If you don't know what Discord is, that's okay. I didn't, like 5 minutes before this call. No, I'm just kidding. I did know about it, what it was, but I just joined today, basically. But it's like Slack. It's like if you had a great big Facebook Messenger or Facebook group, but a little bit more organized. So basically what you get to do is connect with a bunch of organizers across the country. We can collaborate on the projects that you saw on that timeline, or maybe we come up with different stuff together. Really what it's going to do is help us work together in a way that's a lot more decentralized. So I definitely see lots of people saying that they've signed up or that they're going to sign up once the Zoom call is done. That's so incredible. Can't wait to get rolling with you on this. I think this spring and summer is going to be really exciting. So thank you all for signing up, and we'll be in touch. I'm going to pass it off to Jen, and then we're going to round out the call.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So remember earlier I mentioned part of our 5 steps. The second step we were going to take together today was a digital action. So we're going to do that right now. You don't need to exit the Zoom call. I want you to open up the link that's about to be posted in the chat. It's transitioncanada.ca/action. So all 130 plus of us are going to actually take that fax action I mentioned before. So just copy and paste that link that we posted in the chat, and you'll be on the Transition Canada website. From there, you'll see the fax action. All you need to do is fill in your name, email, postal code. You can read the message from the future, and then you just hit send. It's really that simple. It's just one click. And who knew it'd be so simple to send a message from the future? And as we mentioned earlier, we know the fax action seems a bit archaic, but this is still a main way our government offices communicate with each other. So by flooding their offices with physical faxes and messages from the future, we can send a clear message that can't be ignored. And this fax action will send a message from the future to your Member of Parliament and Environment Minister Guilbeault. It will help illustrate the future we can have if they act with courage now. So when you're done, come back to the Zoom, let us know when you're back in the chat. You can raise your hand, you can just drop a comment in the chat that you're done, and we'll take a moment to let you folks complete that fax action. Yeah, so again, the website's in the chat. Thank you, Debbie and Mark. transitioncanada.ca/action. That's great. Margaret, Robert, Mary, that's awesome. A lot of folks are coming in, letting us know that they're done. We'll give folks a few more moments. Yeah, so we'll take another minute. Make sure you send your fax action now. And once you're done, let us know. That's so great. There's so many names coming in. That's awesome.
And I'm just seeing, I saw a couple of comments in the chat about what does a just transition look like sector to sector in different parts of the country. I would say there's been tons of work on this. So if you follow the work of organizations like the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, they have so much good work that they've done on just transition. Would definitely encourage you to look up some of their reports. Even their social media on just transition has been really great. So if you're looking for more of that substantive work, I would definitely point you towards groups like Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Also, organizations like Iron and Earth are already doing a lot of the like retooling and retraining work. So would definitely point people in that direction. And then I also saw Bob, hi Bob, mentioned the provincial election in Ontario. And just want to say that on May 1st, which is approaching very quickly, that's the International Day of the Worker, and across Ontario and definitely in other parts of the country, there are going to be mobilizations for May Day, for International Workers' Day. So encourage you all to look up, if you're Ontario or elsewhere, if there's going to be an event happening in your community.
Awesome, thanks for that, Katie. So yeah, it looks like most folks have let us know in the chat that they've done the action. So thank you so much, everyone. We just organized our first fax action event together. And this feels really awesome and really inspiring. We're building something powerful here. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Katie to close us off for the evening.
Amazing. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I think today was pretty great. Thank you all for coming. There's so many familiar names and faces, so it was really nice to gather with you all tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll, like, some of our team will stick around for a couple minutes, so feel free to drop them in there. But for the rest of you who are feeling fired up and are feeling good, make sure that you sign up to be part of the Climate Corps. You're going to get in your inbox an invitation to organize a fax event. And so really hope that you all take some time to think about when you would want to host one in your community and look through the toolkit. So yeah, and sign up to join our amazing new Discord. It's in the chat there. I have hope for the Manitoba provincial parties because groups like Manitoba Energy Justice Coalition and activists like you, Mike, I think we got to keep our chins up and keep motivated and keep motivating each other. And that's where my hope comes from. And I see that a couple people have their hands raised. Do some of you folks have questions? We can take a minute to answer them here. I don't see any other questions up top. Oh, Debbie, here you go. You should be able to unmute now. Are you able to unmute yourself, Debbie, or no? It might not work. Maybe try to type your question into the chat if you can. I see from John, the Green Party at the federal and provincial are sensitive to these issues and perhaps some sections of the NDP. Yeah, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what political party you're talking about. There's challenges with all of them. And so I would just say that we really have to dig in and get to the meat, or non-meat protein of the issues, and be really clear with our political leaders about what our green lines are for the just transition and what our red lines are. Like, yeah, I think there are going to be a lot of corporations who want to get in and make a lot of money off the just transition, and we have to be really clear that we're not looking for more of the same old, right? I see Bob has his hand raised. I'm not actually sure if we're going to be able to have people unmute though. I think it's just like a setting that we created for this. Oh, there we go, Bob, go for it.
Hi, well, I put in the chat about our Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign, and I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but we have 100 environmental and labor and other organizations signed on to it already, including David Suzuki and the Climate Emergency Unit. And I think the more organizations sign into that, it's going to be important, not just for Ontario, but for working together down the road. I'm working with the OFL and a number of other organizations that I put earlier in the chat. And as you know, I've been involved with the Council of Canadians from the beginning on the just transition work, including talking to MPs. But I really think that we're going to face, if the Conservatives get another majority in Ontario, we're going to see the emergence of extreme far right even more than what they're doing now. And it will make it very difficult for other provinces and other people to take action. So I really believe that every organization should be part of that. And there will be a media release the first week in May. Of course, May 1st is our OFL Day of Action. And the Environmental Defense is doing a major action in Toronto on the 14th. And of course, they're part of our coalition as well. So I urge you to think about that. And Katie, you know me, you can contact me anytime if there's anything we need to talk about. And I think it would strengthen all of us.
Awesome. I think some people are looking for maybe a link to how they would join that, Bob. So if you can drop that in the chat, that would be amazing. How can we make something like this a reality? Let's work together. Crystal, join the Discord. We'll put our brains together and we'll make some good work happen. Okay, I see there's some other questions coming in. Can we have a transcript of the speech? Yes, actually that exists online. So yeah, let's figure out how we can get the script of the speech to you. We'll figure that out. We're going to be sending a follow-up email after the call. So would love to make sure you get it. I believe the Breach Media has a copy of that. All right. Okay. I think we're going to round out the call, folks. Jen put in the chat that if you have questions that we weren't able to get to, that you can email 350canada@350.org. So we hope that you send us a note. And yeah, and Atia put the extended version of the speech in the chat there. So it's a much longer version of what Anjali said tonight. So check that out. It's very inspiring. And there's also a video of the whole thing as well. So please check that out. Okay. Yeah, John, that would be great. Definitely share. Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Have a good one. Be safe and be awesome. Bye, guys.
Amazing. I think, Chris, you can end the meeting whenever, because you're the host.